Jackfruit. Hi everyone, this is Ayana and I'm here with Gab.
Hi, this is Gab, and welcome to the G&A Podcast, brought to you by Cultural Vistas and YSEALI Seeds, Y Digital Solutions, and the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines.
So, Gab and I created this podcast because we always talk about friends doing inspiring work in their communities. We know there are many of them out there and needed a space to just talk about it. So, why not create a podcast to amplify their voices and maybe inspire more people?
Exactly. We want to be able to create a ripple effect of valuable conversations and provide a platform to connect with like minded people.
And since we are both international exchange alumni of the US Embassy Manila, we celebrate this community by bringing them together, featuring different themes of their advocacies. And we are so excited to start this conversation. So please don't forget to subscribe to the GNA podcast. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Music.
Welcome again to another webinar this Saturday. Thank you for spending your time again with us.
I have a new friend, and at first they were very serious people.
Magandang araw and mabuhay! Cherumon, Ayana.
Okay, so today we will be talking about sustainability, plant-based diet, and eco-based living. And since our umbrella theme for the first season of the podcast is restoration, we'd like to ask the question, what are some of the sustainable ways to lead an eco-friendly lifestyle? Is it really possible to be sustainable? How does leading a plant-based lifestyle contribute to restoring the planet? These are some of the questions that we'd like to answer tonight in our podcast episode. And fortunately, we'll be joined by some special guests. Our special guests for today are coming from different backgrounds, but are all united with one advocacy: restoring the earth, plant-based diet, sustainability, and eco-living. They're going to share their expertise on these key topics, talk about the impact of their initiatives, and of course, share some best practices with our audiences.
All right, Gab, let's welcome them for all our guests to be on the stage. Could you please introduce them to us?
Okay, so the first guest is an early career crop scientist and an advocate of plant resources for food and agriculture conservation and sustainable use. He has 2 years of experience in rice breeding research and 2 years in community agricultural development, advocating for the sustainable use and development of plant genetics resources using participatory approaches in the Philippines, Laos, PDR, Myanmar, and Vietnam. Currently, he is completing a master's degree in agricultural sciences and resource management on the tropics and subtropics at the University of Bonn, Germany. So let's all welcome to the stage Sandy Jan Labaroza, a project secretary of Ecomentary. Hi, Sandy.
Hi. Hello.
Okay. The second guest is the co-founder and CEO of Worth the Health Foods. He is passionate in using bioscience entrepreneurship to create social impact. He believes that the purpose of food innovation is to create meaningful progress in sustainable food systems, and the key to Asian food security is plant-based. As a small plant-based food processing and manufacturing company, WTH Foods produces plant-based meat or alternative protein using local ingredients. Reducing food waste and incorporating circular economy practices are important priorities. He is keen in meeting industry experts and potential business partners who are equally passionate in promoting plant based food innovations. Let's all welcome to the stage Michael Stiefenko. Hi, Stephen. I think you're
Hi.
still driving around.
Sorry, yeah, I'm on the road. Sorry. Hi, yeah. Thanks, Gab, for that introduction. Hi, Ayana. My name is Steven. I'm the founder and CEO of Worth the Health Foods. We are a plant-based alternative protein startup. We're based in Manila, the Philippines. So we make plant-based versions of well-loved Southeast Asian dishes using local and sustainable ingredients. So like lunch from luncheon meat to to local sausages to corned beef, giniling, yun. So we want to make plant-based the future and mainstream in the Philippines.
Awesome. Okay. We'll talk more about that, Stephen. We still have one more guest. The third guest that will be joining us tonight is Kev Cuevas, one of my friends in YSEALI community. He is a project manager of award-winning project Grow Asian. As a community organizer and founder, Kev Cuevas has more than 4 years of extensive experience in the startup and social innovation ecosystem. He currently works as a senior economic development specialist at the innovation staff of the NEDA. Kev is currently helping write the National Innovation Agenda and Strategy document as part of the NEDA Innovation Staff's Strategic Policy and Initiatives Division. Kev finished his degree in Agribusiness Management from UP Los Baños and was a board passer for the Philippine Board of Agriculture, among the many achievements that he has, particularly in the area of inclusive agriculture and farm worker rights. Let's all welcome to the stage the CEO of Tagani, Kevin Cuevas.
Hi, thanks, Gab. Thanks for that generous introduction. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Kevin.
All right, welcome everyone and happy holidays. Happy holidays all the way here to the East Coast in New York
Happy
City. Um,
holidays.
and shout out to my people there in the Philippines. I'm so excited and welcome again to the G&A podcast. And I believe we are going green today. So just because I said that, I'd like to start light. I know you've said hi and hello to everyone and the introductions, but I'd like to start light by introducing yourself uniquely. So, just a quick icebreaker. I'd like you to pick a fruit or a vegetable that describes you and why. May mga short team building tayo dito sa GNA Podcast, right, Gab? Okay, so, let me see. I think Cab is very
Yes.
enthusiastic looking at it. Let's start with Cab, and then let's go with Sandy and Steven after this. All right, go ahead, Cab.
Is it a plant?
You can do plant or fruit or vegetable. Let's just
All
go
right.
green.
I think I want to go with green, so I'll choose kangkong. A plant kangkong specifically because that's Pinoy. The one that are narrower, the leaves,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what I plant. Because that's easier for hydroponics.
All right, thank you. Parang gusto, namiss ko ng kangkong actually.
Yeah, crispy kangkong.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Oh,
Gusto
all right,
natin yan.
Mhm. Let's go with Sandy. Go ahead.
Um, I would go with my favorite fruit, which is durian. It's a misunderstood fruit, and if you don't know durian, you know you don't like it, just like me. So yeah,
I love durian. It's one of the hardest, most expensive fruit to get here in the States. So I would die to have it right now. Except that my husband wouldn't like me. So let's just agree to disagree. And then let's go to Stephen here.
I'll go for jackfruit. Yung the unripe jackfruit. We use a lot of it for our plant-based ingredient. So unripe jackfruit has this fibrous texture that mimics meat, and it has very neutral flavor. like me, very neutral, and then you can spice it up however you like.
Oh,
It's very unique.
I
uh,
love that.
yeah, I haven't thought of that.
Sige, wait, let's go as well, Gab. Like, let's try to introduce ourselves with a plant, fruit, or
Okay,
vegetables. Why don't you
you
go
go
first,
first.
Gab?
Oh yeah. Well, there's nothing that I could really think of right now, but I'll probably introduce myself as a avocado, just because that's the first thing that I thought of. But I really love fruits more than vegetables, I guess. So fruits are sweet, and I'm also sweet as a person. So that's the best way to describe myself in the fruit or vegetable style. How about you, Ayana?
Oh my gosh, para ano ba? Pabonggaan. I'll just go with a very basic thing. I'll go for a banana because it sounds with Ayana. Just kidding. Well, it's yellow. I'm Asian, but then inside it's white. I'm not saying I'm white, but technically just representing out from the country. But that's about it. I'm really happy to get to know you for that quick, introduction. And now I'll turn over the stage to Gab. Go ahead, Gab.
Yeah, the first thing I would actually launch the questioning, but before that, I would like to really highlight the fact that all of the guests that we have here tonight have almost very similar profiles. So I'm just really amazed by the fact that we're able to gather all of these people here who are really very passionate about plant based diets or like digital entrepreneurship or studying more into like rice research and biology, like similar to what Sandy is doing. And of course, Stephen and Kev have really caved their own legacies in the startup ecosystem, particularly in digital entrepreneurship. So I want to throw this question, and I couldn't find him right here, right now, because I guess we lost. Okay, Stephen is here already. I'll start with Stephen if it's okay. I hope you're still holding up in there. I know you're traveling. I hope you could hear us. Steph, I want to know more about your journey to entrepreneurship because you've been here in this industry for quite a while. I'm not saying you're old, okay? Steph, you've launched the WTH Foods as one of your baby projects. Can you tell us more about the backstory of WTH? How did it all start? And how did you come up with the idea?
Yeah, so my background is science, so biology. I did biology, and then I did my master's in the UK, Cambridge, for bioscience enterprise. So I've always wanted to be in the science innovation, science commercialization aspect, and how to put the Philippines in the map of innovation in terms of biology. And I thought that science in the Philippines is best expressed through food, and that's why we went into I know. So another fun fact is we started a craft beer brand, Nipa Brew, um, 7 years ago. So and that was when we got into food science, food innovation. But then I realized, or I thought that we're not pushing innovation enough, or we're not showing Philippine natural products kasi all of the ingredients of craft beers are imported, like your wheat, your yeast, your malts. And so we thought, what is the next big thing in terms of food innovation? And that's when alternative proteins come into mind. And so with YSEALI, I was able to get a fellowship in the US, and that's when I was able to explore the alternative proteins sector in the US. And sabi ko, hey, I think we can do this in the Philippines with our crops, with our plant protein sources, or we can do this in the Philippines. And that's how WTH Foods was born in 2019. So we wanted to come up with um, plant-based alternative proteins for Filipinos, made by Filipinos, and taste and have the profile for the Filipino taste. So that was 2019, and then and then pandemic 2020, 2021. We are still in the R&D stage. So we are coming up with products made of from mung beans to jackfruit to microalgae. These are our ingredients, locally and sustainably sourced, making products like giniling, corned beef, longanisa sausages for the Filipino palate as well. So that's a short story of WTH.
Wow, that's a very well informative short story, I would say, because a lot of the things that, well, normally when you talk about entrepreneurship and their backstory, they talk about, the struggles that they had and things like that. But Stephen's approach is really super science based, you know. So, and I like the combo of beer because normally when we talk about beer, we combine that with sisig and all the unhealthy stuff, right? That we want to plug into our system. But Stephen is like he wants to pair the beer entrepreneurship journey that he had with something more healthy and plant based. So that's really very unique as well. um, Ayana?
Yeah, when no, you know what, Stephen, when you said something about beer, I'm already sold out. Like, where can I get this right now? I am such a, I debunk the myth about being not liking beer, but as a woman, I love beer so much that I not that I
We've
can have
tried
it for
them.
breakfast.
Actually, we've tried the Nipa Brew beers. They really are good. Like they even have this YSEALI bottle. Right, Kev? You were there as well, right? You've tasted it. Yep.
Oh, oh
It's
my
really, really
god.
good.
Yeah, that's my next bucket list. Hopefully, when I can go home and yeah, and like my husband and I bond over beer. We get the best, like what's the best IPA or what's the next available local beer that we have here upstate. So when you said that, I'm already sold. So, like, take my money. But moving forward, and but we'll also get back to that shortly. Let's go to Sandy. So Sandy, according to our research, di ba, may pa R&D din ang GNA podcast. So I'm interested in how Ecomentary came to be. Like, it's very specific on using filmmaking to bring focus on producing green films about biodiversity conversation. So please, can you share more about this?
The project A Commentary is a brainchild of my fellowship in the US last
Mhm.
2016. So it is developed by me and my group mates there from different backgrounds, also in different countries in ASEAN. And then we all love films and we are also passionate about biodiversity. And sometimes when we brainstorm, we were thinking like, how can we because for people to be really engaged in conservation activities, they have to see it live in action, or at least they have a concrete idea on what's happening. So I think the most easiest way to deliver these messages is through videos or documentaries that really captures it. I mean, in ASEAN, there's also like a lot of young filmmakers who's doing a lot of different stuff. Why not engage them and maybe uh, make them lean onto making green films or documentaries? So it's not because me and my group mates are not filmmakers. So why not make them? So why not encourage the real filmmakers to make these films? So that's how a commentary came about. And yeah, and I think yeah, I mean it's a really good concept, at least for us. And then the YCDCs also gave us funding, so it came into reality. And yeah, it was a really great time during that time.
I couldn't agree more. Like, talking about, we all know that, we call it the panini, the pandemic reality that we have right now. The closest thing that we can connect to people is using, films, reels, your TikTok thing and all that. I don't have TikTok, but I share it with my husband. But that's like the easiest thing that we have now to reach out to people. It's high time more than ever. I guess, to really use that medium to reach out to people, especially to young people. I remember, I'm not sure which commercial, but when Snapchat was still a thing, I'm not sure if it's still a thing, but I hope so. Um, they were doing ano ba yun, parang I'm not sure which nonprofit, but it was so parang it was so eye catching for a minute to show everything all together and just get the attention of the people using the medium. And I'm really excited to learn more about what you've been doing, especially that it's a collaboration with the ASEAN community, which is very exciting because we have different stories to tell, but at the same time we have the same climate, the biodiversity, and it's an effort to work it out together. Gab?
Yeah, I really like. To be honest, when I actually heard the word a commentary, it was super. Like really catchy to me. I felt like when I was reviewing your project, you have a lot going on, and like it was also very impactful in your community, especially that you're using innovative approaches to tell the story of of caring for the environment and things like that. But Sandy, before I jump to Kev, I want to know more. Like, can you give us an idea about what you're doing right now? Because I've already mentioned that you are currently in Germany and you're studying agricultural science. Can you give us like a preview of what it's about? What are you currently doing in Germany? Are you under a fellowship? What are you pursuing? And things like that.
Yeah, I mean, by heart, I am a scientist to be. So here I'm studying my master's, and right now I'm under the scholarship of the AAD, but my contract is already expired, but I did not renew it, so I'm on my own now here. And then now I'm just finishing my thesis on basically I'm just studying the microbiome diversity in the rice roots, because these bacteria in the rice roots determines how much methane the rice can emit, because one of the greatest methane emitter in agriculture is rice production, especially lowland rice production. So hopefully the impact of my study, I'm doing like very serious sequencing, DNA sequencing methods to identify how many microbes, how much diversity. So hopefully I can do plant breeding techniques in the future to modify the bacterial diversity in the rice roots to make it emit less methane into the atmosphere. So yeah.
Okay. You know what? That was really awesome and super scientific. And I don't want to dig deeper into the methane level, the DNA sequencing. Before we dig deep into that, but you know what, Sandy, I really wish that we invest more on education. Like, I do believe that we have a lot of promising scientists who are pursuing all of these academic studies overseas. But I'm hoping that once you come back to the Philippines, you will be more incentivized by the government to pursue whatever those projects are and really help our farmers here have a more productive farming industry. And speaking of farming, of course, we have Kev Cuevas here, who has a startup of Tagani. But of course, like Kevin has been a colleague of mine in the YSEALI community. We have been running projects on different lengths. And I know that Kevin is really very passionate about farming, about agriculture, and has a lot of things to share. But first and foremost, let's talk about the winning grant under the YCD Seeds Grow ASEAN, among many other projects. Kev, can you tell us more about Grow ASEAN? What was the motivation and coming up with a project? And then slowly talk about Tagani and what are you guys up to right now?
Yeah, thank you for that. Grow ASEAN actually was an inspiration from my personal experiences, because I figured out as an agriculture student, we're not taught about digital tools, digital technologies, and those are things that are needed now, needed today, because that's how we are going to leapfrog towards the future. I always see that although we don't have much machines in the Philippines, perhaps we could leverage our technologies, perhaps using GIS or some remote sensing techniques. So with that YSEALI Seeds grant, we thought several ASEAN agriculture students and graduates on the use of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence so that they could leverage that tool, or those tools rather, into practicing agriculture better. Some of the graduates of the program, the boot camp rather, were agricultural engineers. Some of them also were animal scientists now. And another part of the program were our marketplace, wherein we helped farmers, especially those that were particularly affected by the pandemic, the first part of the pandemic. We helped them market their produce. So the Grow ASEAN project really was cutting across a lot of sectors and problems in the agriculture sector. But basically, what we wanted was put digital in the agriculture sector in Southeast Asia, because we know that we are lagging behind with our competitors in other regions. So that was an inspiration also of my prior experience as a reporter at Rappler. We were, Rappler is a data journalism and investigative journalism company. And then that's where I learned a lot about data curation, data reporting. And I just applied those things in my field now as a licensed agriculturist. And that's what I am very passionate as a person. Now, although I have closed down, unfortunately, Tagani for since August this year. Before I joined the National Economic and Development Authority. Although now at NEDA, I do more of innovation policy coordination. So I lead the section called Policy Coordination, wherein we write the National Innovation Agenda and Strategy document. But before anything else, before I go deeper down, my views and opinions don't reflect my agency. So just to get it out right now,
Right.
just to be
Yes.
safe.
Before any quoted pronouncements are,
Yeah.
laid out in the social media. But just a follow up question, Kev, because you mentioned that you closed your organization. Is there any chance of opening it up again in the future?
Well, I'm thinking of creating, well, now because I'm a licensed agriculturist, I'm going to use that license in practicing for consulting. So before we do it as an organization, but now I can do it as my own. Before I hire agriculturists and engineers, now I can do it on my own. So perhaps as a professional, an independent professional in the future.
I love it. This conversation just got very interesting. Oh my god, I'm really speechless right now. Uh, so well, in my case, like knowing, yeah, in which I wish I studied science more. Like I wish I had that gusto and that much interest to be inspired. That science can bring you more. Like, but when I hear about science, it's sometimes like not shook. I'm shook. I have that fear at first of like, oh my god, will I understand this and things like that. But I wish I studied more about it. But so like for me, I kind of resonate at some point, not with a very scientific aspect. But I also went to Korea. I went to study for my master's in public administration, but it was focused on community development. So I did not expect to go out farming. um, it was rooted on the Korean community development model, or you've heard about Semaul Undong, so which inspired that movement in Korea. But it's mostly very practical on how they were able to utilize land that was very barren, and then it was coupled with the pioneering spirit of they have that Korean values and all things. But now that I think about it, if I was able to combine that practical experience backed up with the amazing science behind it, I wish there could be more appreciation. And hopefully, when I get home, I would have that partnership and collaboration, wink, wink, with everyone here in the platform. Hopefully, in the near future, retiring and getting my own land. Those kinds of things. Like priorities change now. Like getting into the pandemic phase, like everyone would just want to go back and have that peaceful life and get be more sustainable, knowing about the realities that things could go rough, the looting and all that. So we have this platform, and Gab, like imagine these people right now on the platform, and in the long run they could be up there running the country as well, or not just running but maybe on the background and doing a lot in our community. And talking about all of those going sustainable, I would really just like to ask this question to everyone. Like anyone can go ahead. Because I'm really curious for you guys, like for practicing this lifestyle. What does sustainable lifestyle look like? Is it challenging to practice it in the Philippines? It's a very like whoa question to ask, especially people would hear it, in layman's terms, huh? Sustainable? Mahal naman yan? Those kinds of things. Like you would really hear that immediately, or like it's it's not even practical to say that, or to have that lifestyle when most of, not really most, I'm just assuming, but like for me coming with like the immediate community, when they hear about that, parang ay di ko afford, or ay it's easier. So I'd like to hear that. Anyone can just go ahead upstage and like share it, or do you want me to volunteer? Just kidding. Sandy.
Yeah, to be honest, it depends on how you define sustainability. It
Mhm.
all comes down from the definition. For me, I'm not really sure on how should I define sustainability, but in if I'm going to base on our situation in the Philippines with the ordinary farmers, I think it's really hard to do it because most of the organic stuff, if we define sustainability as an organic food or something like that, are
Mhm.
really expensive, and we don't have even a very strong organic certification. How do we define organic in the first place? Also, we don't have that kind of system in the Philippines. I think like a very strong organic certification body. No, and yeah, I mean, if it's only like if you only producing your own food, growing your own food, being a locavore, which means you just eat whatever grows in your community and you don't have to import to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. I think it can be done by the rural community, but not by the urban people.
Mhm.
And also, if we really want our people to be sustainable, there should be a strong backup by by the law, not
Mhm.
just by individual. I mean, I'm not saying that individual contribution does not make an impact. It does make an impact, but if we want this impact to be a long run impact, to be
Mhm.
sustainable, it should be backed up by law, I would say.
Right. Thank you. That really hits through the heart, right? Like it's such a reality. Like Sandy pointed out, like, hey, it's not realistic, but to make it realistic, it's also expensive, and it would take a long process, especially in the Philippines, to put it into a law or even just an act. That could already be very challenging. It would take, different types of opinions and all things that would go hand in hand just to practice sustainable lifestyle. Thank you, Sandy. Kev, anything to add?
Yeah, to add on to that, although I just like to correct, there's an organic certification from the BAFS, Agricultural Fishery Standards of the Department of Agriculture. Although again, it's quite costly. I look as an agriculturist, I look at it in now working at the economic planning agency. I look at it in a macro level set of things. I don't necessarily practice sustainable lifestyle, although I try as much as I can, like minimizing my meat consumption, those kinds of things, and reducing my plastic bags whenever I go shopping. But whenever I talk about sustainability, I look at it in a macro scale because most of the greenhouse gas emissions are really made by industries that proliferate such. Agriculture as such is one of the largest greenhouse gas emissions. Um, Animal agriculture because of their carbon emissions like farts and burps because of their poops, and of course also what Sandy is doing with rice because of their greenhouse gas emissions. It can contribute to the global warming, and then such the global warming. And now whenever I try to input in the policies or anything that I write about, I try to put as much as possible green financing, those kinds of strategies. I try to, as much as, although this government, the Duterte administration has been very an advocate actually of green financing. So that for me is very inspiring because as an agriculturist, I can push forward those advocacies even without a big push because they pull it together. Uh, through the governance, and also, um, just pushing forward those kinds of whenever I look at sustainability, also I look in the social side of things, like farmers being able to consolidate their production as easy as possible so that we could reduce our transportation costs. And because we could reduce our transportation costs, we could also reduce our use for fuel. So those things like that, although looking at it in a macro scale, those simple lower costs, minute costs, if we add them up all together, it would be a big difference. And that's how I look at sustainability. It's all about those micro things adding up all together, and we could, have a bigger impact.
Thank you, Kev. That's very interesting to also know and also to provide us, the information you have on hand. Um, just a comment, like number one, okay, I agree with Sandy. It's really expensive. To give a perspective in the U.S., going through organic is very expensive. You go Whole Foods, you have $100 and you come out with like, I don't know, 3 pieces with you. You go to Walmart, you come out with, you can fill your entire fridge when you buy something from Walmart for just $100. So I say I try to like what, and also to go through what Kevin said, going through like different, it's just putting in a little bit of your lifestyle and hopefully you get to sustain it long term. Like here, well, in the state of New York, obviously you have to have your own bags when you do grocery shoppings and all that, and then you, if you don't, you have that, that added 50 cents. But 50 cents is already big enough considering inflation, and if you could just get your extra bag with you, I would. So we do that every time. Like instances, I got frustrated when we don't have it. I have to really drive back and like, hey, let's get our bags. Like, I don't want to spend extra cents or a dime just to get, just for those bags. And then it's very fragile just because they wanted to recycle fast, like to, um, so I have to make an effort with that. It takes, sometimes it's a pain, but those little effort that you make can really go a long way. So not just, if we can't really practice sustainable lifestyle per se, as like in the big level, you can do it, in little aspects of your life. Talking about, minimizing plastic uses, to here almost all the takeouts, you have that experience in the States. Everything is just in boxes, styrofoams. It's very challenging to dispose them too, because they separate the trash, and you have to be careful when, when they pick it up and things like that. So it's a two-way thing. Like, consumers do it, businesses do it, so it must also we all must have that ecosystem as well to practice, sustainable lifestyle, because I alone can do it, but if everyone does not, I'm not sure if I'm making any difference at all. So that kind of mindset sets in with people, and like, I don't really want to practice it anymore. So it has to take a collective, effort for everyone to do it. And I believe, to ask that question, now I think about it, it's not just challenging to practice it in the Philippines, but everywhere else in the world. Except if you have that really, strong law to really push it forward. Like here, it stops in the state of New York. When you go to another state, it could be a different thing. That makes it really challenging to also sustain. Anything to add more, Gab, on your end?
Well, not really. Actually, I'm more interested in hearing about Stephen's thoughts on leading a sustainable lifestyle as well, and
Uh,
the challenges of doing that in the Philippines as well. Okay.
yeah, so I think you're both very correct in mentioning about sustainability and in this part of the world. So in Asia, we talk about a lot about sustainability, but talk is different from walk. So we don't really walk the talk. So yeah, we use a lot of plastic bags, ganyan. But from a micro perspective, when we talk about alternative proteins, we look at the macro perspective. Uh, so when the question that we ask when we talk about alternative proteins is how do we feed 50 or 10 billion people by 2050?
And so experts say that populations, so 10 billion people, will be about 35% increase in population from the current 7.5 billion. But we have to grow twice or 100% more crops to feed that 35% growth in population. Why? Because the demand for protein will grow by 70%. And a lot of our proteins are sourced from animals. Um, and in terms of animals, we have to kill literally like trillions of animals to feed billions of people. So, there is, for us who are in the alternative protein space, there is nothing sustainable in killing this amount of lives just to feed um, the humans beings demands for protein. So that's where we come up with alternative protein. Now, why go through the animal when we could make protein straight out of plant sources? And for us, that's on the macro perspective, I guess, of sustainability. And given the COVID situation, uh, I hope people realize that all of these pandemics and viruses actually come from or would have like animal sources, and that's why we believe that plant based is the future, for all of these reasons, for your personal health, for the environment, and for animal welfare. So that for us is sustainability in a macro perspective.
Thank you, Stephen. So I really like that you divided this into a macro level approach and micro level lens, right? Like I really like this discussion, especially that here in the Philippines, and I was taught in the design thinking methodologies that we have this kind of tendency, Filipinos, to always zoom in to a lot of things. Like we zoom into different issues of the society, the politics. We always go into what's happening here, what's happening there, but we always fail zooming out, like looking at the macro level as well. So I guess what Stephen did or shared there is like a healthy balance between a micro level and a macro level approach on how the things that we do actually amount to a bigger puzzle. So it's like, for example, on the case of alternative proteins, how does that amount to the future? How do we imagine a future with alternative proteins, with us consuming less meat and things like that? So I really like that disparity that you draw in there. So we're already talking about challenges, and you guys already sort of like highlighted why it's challenging to live or lead a sustainable lifestyle in the Philippines. Um, Given that it's challenging, what keeps you moving or what drives you to continue with all of these advocacies of agriculture science, of digital entrepreneurship, on farming, on leading a plant based diet, and things like that? Maybe we could start with Sandy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm just thinking of what keeps me going. I mean, there's endless possibilities with science, I would say. And to be totally honest, I don't believe that solely plant-based diet would be the future. Because if we cultivate insects as an alternative protein source, they are more sustainable and has less waste than your bigger mammal counterparts. And yeah, and also it depends on the plants that you're going to use for protein, because you might need a lot of land area, meaning you have to clear a lot of forest maybe, or watersheds. That is not also beneficial. And the protein in plants does not compete really well with the protein that you can find in meat. But on insects, it can be, it's good. But I'm not saying that the plant-based diet is not a no-go. I mean, there's always advantage and disadvantages. The word here is minimize, not not how do you call eliminate, because we cannot eliminate all the things that we don't like. So I'm actually, yeah. And to be honest, I'm not really right now in my current lifestyle. I'm not really into this sustainable living, but I'm trying to minimize as much as footprint I can. And with all the problems that we have, with all the catastrophe that we're experiencing, I think it should be done. And then, especially if you watch the Don't Look Up Netflix film, it makes me more, it makes me realize that I should do better for the planet and not ignore the early warning signs that we should do action now. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. And yes, we celebrate the diversity of ideas and, of course, the approaches. So, whatever it is to actually help us care better for the planet, maybe if we're over consuming meat, we might as well balance that with plant based lifestyle or things like that. I guess what always works is that this entire notion that if we overdo something, then it's almost really harmful to a certain extent. So I would vouch for a healthy balance of anything that we are going to do. Um, what about you, Keb? What's your thought about your passion? Where is this passion coming from, despite all the challenges?
Well, for me, well, I come from a family of farmers. So just to get that started, my dad was when he was young, he was farming up until he went to Metro Manila to study college. That was the whole life he had. And although my initial dream was to become an MD, I initially took biology in college, but then I shifted to agribusiness just to get into UPLB. But later on, I fell in love with agriculture, the purpose, because I get to balance business and then agriculture, biology and then business. So it's like the best of both worlds for me. And now that I get into technology, I'm a data scientist also. So I get to balance all the worlds that I love because I do programming as well. So I also do, I also am studying genomic data science at the moment. So I try to be this jack of all trades that but you cannot be a master of I still haven't pursued my masters. I haven't finished my masters. I'm doing my data science degree at the moment. But going back, it's because I think um pulling back the experience when I was a child, that there would come rains and typhoons, and the rains would drip into my face without my parents with me, because our roof would probably fly away or because of the harsh winds. I use that as my inspiration every time it's asked to me, because what if there's another person, not from Metro Manila, from another province somewhere remote, and they experience that worse, although me, I was able to live my life today. What if they cannot do what I did, or they were not given opportunities? So I try as much as possible to provide those opportunities, because I was given the opportunity, and thanks to YSEALI for recognizing my efforts, I try to pass it on to people who I think would benefit from that opportunity. And that keeps me, now at my work as an economist, that keeps me on ground, that keeps me on track of my passion, and that keeps me inspired every day.
Thank you, Keb. That was so inspiring. And I actually, when we talk about all of these things, this unfortunate circumstances that we've had before, like our roofs, getting blown off out of typhoon, sometimes we just laugh about it. But when it's really happening, it was so traumatizing. And I guess it's part of the coping mechanisms, because we are born with this situation in the Philippines. We are experiencing a lot of typhoons as under the Asia Pacific Ring of Fire. So I guess we're born to be resilient, and sometimes we just laugh these things off. But it's really very important that we, take all of these lessons from the experiences that we had, and then we rise more stronger than ever before. Like Keb, just doing a lot of giving back to the community. So props to you, Keb, and all the efforts that you're doing for YSEALI and for the farmers and the young entrepreneurs that are looking up to you. Let's have Stephen as well. Steph, you've been a very inspiring entrepreneur to a lot of younger entrepreneurs, especially that you've had your startups, WTH, and of course, Nipa Brew is a hub for many YSEALI entrepreneurs and events. So what keeps you going into this very challenging space, especially that you've highlighted that it's challenging to lead a sustainable lifestyle here? What keeps you going into this? Where's the passion coming from?
Or I lost you. For is it my turn or
Yes. Sorry. Yeah,
yeah?
it's Stephen. Yeah.
I lost a bit. Yeah, so I want to talk about motivations from a personal level as well in the bigger picture. So on a personal level, ever since graduating college, I've always thought science graduates are a bit of we lack marketing, we lack we lack marketability as a science graduate, and so I thought like and a lot of our scientists are going away, and so I thought na parang how do I show Filipinos that you can make money out of science in your country? So that's my personal motivation. So science commercialization, um, putting the Philippines in the map of innovation is a very personal, very very personal mission for me. In terms of more bigger picture uh, meanings. Of course, like whatever we do as an entrepreneur, we want to make an impact. So more than being your own boss or having your own time, we want to be impactful to our customers, to our stakeholders with our enterprises. So in terms of plant-based, I took up a plant-based nutrition course, and it's an argument for another day that a balanced plant-based diet could actually be um, sustainable and actually sustain human health without animal-based protein. But on a bigger I don't know on a bigger picture, Filipinos are now suffering. The leading causes of Filipino deaths actually are is still not COVID, but heart diseases, cancer, and diabetes. It's the same as the modern, I think, like modern population, modern world. And we know that these top three killers, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and diabetes, which is related to obesity, are actually nutrition related. We might think that these problems are genetically linked or hereditary. We say that we are unlucky because we have the gene for cancer, we have the genes for cardiovascular diseases or diabetes. But did we ever think that the diet that we are having, we actually learned from our parents, from our grandparents, from our forefathers? If your diet runs in the family, chances are the illnesses also runs in the family. And we moved into a more plant-based, a more animal-based, protein-rich diet. And that's what we're seeing. Alam mo, it's not different from the advice from the 1990s when we were told to eat your green leafy vegetables. When we did a survey, um, only less than 50% of Filipino urban working population has actually consumed a full dish of green leafy or deep yellow vegetables in the past 24 hours. Actually, I could ask you now, when was the last time you had that full plate of yellow vegetables or deep green leafy vegetables? We're missing that out. So, yes, admittedly, as Filipinos and as a very Catholic country, every animal is fair game. We love our pork, we love our beef. So I'm not asking really. You're right. Like I'm not asking Filipinos to eliminate animal based protein or meat from their diet, but actually, yes, shift to a more a plant based lifestyle or diet. Funny thing as well. No? When we think about saving the environment, it's always about use less water or switch off the lights. But if you've seen some studies that Actually, eating a burger is equivalent to taking a few hundred showers in terms of water use. But no one tells you to shift to a more plant-based diet or lifestyle when we think about conserving resources. So this is the bigger one of the bigger pictures for us as well. And of course, like as an entrepreneur, we always look for high growth industries, and we believe that the movement is there, sustainability, and it will just be in a matter of years when sustainability finally catches up to our side of the world, to Southeast Asia, and I'm hoping that within this lifetime, um, there will be Philippine leaders who will be concerned about sustainability, because when we talk about sustainability, it's related to climate and our home planet, diba? And the Philippines is it will really be greatly affected. I mean, just from the recent Typhoon Odette, we see the devastation that it has caused to our fellow countrymen. So yeah, it's being in line with nature, I guess, in a bigger picture. When we talk about regeneration or regenerative practices, it's being in line with nature, and I think we have really strayed very very far away from what is in line with nature right now. And I want to use entrepreneurship or what we do at WTH Foods to try to, it will take thousands of companies, thousands of startups to realign us to a more sustainable lifestyle. But I hope, if our government officials couldn't do it, that the private sector could lead the way in promoting a more sustainable lifestyle in any way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Yes, just veering a bit away from entrepreneurship, Stefano, because you shared a lot of things. If ever there's an opportunity in the future to have an appointed chief sustainability officer in the Philippine government, will you take up that position?
Well, if
Y-
Kev
Yeah.
appoints me to, as the NEDA chief, Kev can appoint me to be the chief
Oh,
sustainability officer.
yes. um, so yeah, very grateful for all those insights. I couldn't agree with you, especially on the importance of regeneration, especially in terms of like being conscious about our practices, and of course, whenever we talk about different issues such as let's say for example hunger and things like that, like or like shutting down our electricity before we leave our homes, a lot of people think that these issues are mutually exclusive to other things such as nutrition issues or like hunger or like I guess what needs to really be done, and you've already brought this earlier, is looking at these things on a macro level, like taking a step like a step back and making sure that we take a holistic view. Like these things are not necessarily exclusive from one another, they're all interconnected. And this is a perfect segue for us to talk about what's been happening right now, okay? Which is the Typhoon Odette. Currently, we have a lot of Filipinos who were victimized by the typhoon Rai or Typhoon Odette, and we're still doing a lot of donation work, a lot of relief efforts in Siargao and in different communities in Surigao, Cebu, and different parts of the country. So I want to hear your insights on what do you think, coming from a scientific approach on agriculture or whatever your background is, what do you think is the biggest lesson that we can learn from out of these typhoon as Filipinos collectively? Do we have to like adopt better farming practices because this is something that we haven't really seen, or do we need to have like a more resilient approach to disasters? Because it's not new, we have had a lot of typhoons before, but why is it that the kind of effects of the aftermath is still so grave? What are we not doing correctly? So maybe we can start with Sandy.
Yeah, I mean, For me, I'm not really sure because I don't have the exact data if Typhoon Odette is an unusual or just a regular event as a part of the usual El Nino La Nina cycle in the Pacific Ocean or something. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we have typhoons from the past, even stronger typhoons, and I think what 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 are the things that we did wrong, or the government in general, or the people in general also, is like the lack of infrastructure that make us more resilient. And I'm not sure if people are already resilient because they can just bounce back. I mean, that's the definition of resiliency, the ability to bounce back from a very hard situation. But I hope that we had already laws or infrastructure that supports us, or that prevents. We cannot prevent the typhoon, but we can prevent the aftermath of this natural phenomenon in terms of agriculture and buildings, roads, etc., and especially uh, I don't know, evacuation response or something. I, to be honest, I don't have really any idea on how to answer this question. Yeah.
No problem. But thank you for sharing. Yes, I do agree with you that there's a lot of efforts that needs to be done in terms of like becoming more resilient. Um, the evacuation centers being more prepared, or because from what I've heard or researched, a lot of people did not anticipate the effects of the typhoon. A lot of people were not ready because I came from Siargao. I lived there for a month. And based on the people that I've talked to, they did not anticipate that it's going to be that intense. So I feel like, is there a lack of coordination coming from some of our stations, in terms of like projecting the effect of these typhoon? Because it did come as if a lot of the people in Siargao were not ready, and also there's a lack of coordination. They're just really not informed that they have to prepare that much for this typhoon. What about you, Keb? What's your thought on these recent typhoon event that we're facing?
Naku, gusto matama si Sante, charot lang. Well, on my part, I think whew, there's an information gap to start off. We have, because of one of the largest media companies shut down, regional news have been inaccessible virtually now because of also internet connection, because we have this um, internet connectivity gap. Because of that, not everyone can access the right information, because as far as I'm concerned, the forecasts were provided at least 3-5 days before it actually hit the ground. Well, if in terms of the prior question, I had an answer to that. For this one, I don't really have much of an answer, but for the prior one, the previous one, I think if something that we are to realize, for people to realize, is that, one, for them to experience the effect of a typhoon, the worst part of it, they would understand how much climate change actually affects their life. Or number two, if we put it into cost, if we look at it in a macroeconomic perspective, kasi climate change is actually the reason why we have inflation, especially when there's a big typhoon coming up. Prices go up when there's a typhoon, and some of our vegetables and fruits are not available because they're washed out, or it's because the warehouses are too full, so they have to be sold as fast as possible. So the I've read this article from ADB, Asian Development Bank, that the only way that we can control inflation is to actually address the larger problem, which is climate change. So for me, for the normal people, or for the layman to realize how big of an effect climate change is, it's because of the typhoons that the prices actually increase. And that's in an economic perspective. Na kapag nag-typhoon, 5 pesos would increase in your normal bag of veggies, or in your pakbet or something like that. So I guess that's one way we could help them visualize about climate change and how they could act up and propose to their legislators, to their politicians. Now that the election is coming up, we have to knock on their doors and not just vote for them, but actually make them accountable for their decisions and for their policies that they have actually pushed forward. So I guess it's really more on being active in your community and looking at it in a more conscious way how we do things. Yeah.
Thank you, Keb, for sharing some tips on how to deal with the ongoing, like, I guess there's a lot of takeaways that we can learn from this, especially in the future. Like, how do we prepare ourselves better for the upcoming typhoons? Because it's something that we can never really prevent. Like in the you can never relocate the Philippines in the earth, right? So we better have to, like, brace ourselves up for any upcoming circumstances. Stephen, would do you have any idea about what can we learn from this typhoon that?
It's a yearly problem. Um, it's a yearly problem, and I think for me, disaster. The word disaster happens when there is loss of lives or property damage. So technically, if there's no human beings there, it's just natural phenomenon. And typhoons are a part of the Philippines, a part of the Philippines, and will always be part of the Philippines. So, as yeah, I wouldn't have like policy answers for that. But my part of like food innovation, actually, when I think about it and how food affects a lot of people, is we have these pockets of food surplus or food at different times of the year. And then we have these typhoons or natural calamities where we have communities with food insecurity. So as an entrepreneur, my idea or actually is how can we bridge them with technology? Or it's very simple for me. It's the parang food processing, diba? It's there's always like relief goods or but can we make for me, can we make relief goods like healthier? Can we make more nutritious relief goods other than your dried noodles or your like sardines or whatever like unhealthy but unprocessed meat relief goods? So yeah, I don't really have like a policy answer for that. I mean, with a growing population, will always be in line or populations will always be in areas where earthquakes, flooding, I know will typhoons will occur. The funny thing is we have very actually our city engineers or LGU engineers are very aware of where these areas of hazards are. But the problem is, of course, like implementation is always the problem where we cannot. But with this growing population, I think it's really inevitable for human populations to settle in hazardous areas. Yeah. So yeah, it's very difficult when everything is getting expensive with inflation. I don't know how to solve. I don't know how to solve that. So for me, it's ano lang, like maybe relief. How can we offer relief, or how can we um, even if relief, I think like human dignity should be there. So you might get stricken by typhoons, by natural calamities, but you should still have food security. You should still eat decent food despite being affected by these natural calamities. So that's
Right.
my. I think that's what I'm trying to do also with WTH Foods. We're hoping to create nutritious, delicious plant-based, shelf-stable products that can be sent to areas of disaster when that happens. So people who are affected still get decent nutrition and food.
Yeah, and I really like that you're highlighting, you're always going back to your core, I think you're always giving us, like, for example, Keb is going back to his core about, explaining the relationship between economy and what happens during a typhoon, so inflation. And of course, Stephen is bringing up the idea of the need for food security. And like, it doesn't mean that just because we're on a typhoon and we have a lot of food that needs to get delivered, we will have to compromise the quality of the food. So why not start asking, is it possible to have nutritious food? So I guess those are things that we have to mainstream in the conversation a little more, hopefully on a policy level, because the most recent news is that some people, especially in Siargao, the recent deaths are not caused by the typhoon itself anymore, but it's caused by the diarrhea already that's been ongoing in the typhoon stricken areas. So I guess that's already that domino effect, and why we really have to make sure that these things are these friction points are closed as soon as possible. So thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your ideas. Just to close off this conversation, because I know we are having an overtime. Before we close, Ayana actually has a very interesting myth busting for everyone. So go ahead.
Yeah, so now that we've gathered, scientists, and agriculturists, and here Stephen with, the going green entrepreneurship, I would really like to open up this floor. We have three people, and let's go with a myth or fact. It's either you can offer a myth and then debunk that, or you can offer a fact that everyone thought that it's just a myth. So if you have that in mind, put it out here. Let's, debunk fake news as well, whatever you want to put in on the platform. But I'd like to start and tell me if it's a myth or fact, and then, one of you, like each one of you, would have to provide at least a myth or fact and state it, like, why or why not. First, going I think I've said it earlier, but let's just put it out here again. Going green is expensive. Myth or fact? Anyone? You can just unmute. Okay, Kev says it depends. Oh, Sandy unmuted. Yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
Yeah, I would also say it depends on your
Okay.
status in the society.
All right, got it. I think that was pretty much explained earlier, but I would just like to put it out there. So it's not a it's not a black and white answer, but it really just depends. And again, it comes through your core and how you practice it. Anyone would like to offer a myth or fact on the floor?
I guess we have to ask all of them. Just give us one
Stephen
fact
unmuted.
or
Yeah,
myth.
go ahead.
Yeah. Kasi there's a lot of myths to be busted when it comes to plant-based nutrition. So one of them is mung bean causes gout, increases your uric acid. It's a myth. Uh, it's red meat and shellfish. So it's really mostly animal-based diet that causes a spike in uric acid and in turn gout. So that's one myth. Another myth is but this is not really in contention, but there are studies supporting this. So when we have diabetes, the doctor always says na parang avoid sugar or carbs. But no, but there are a lot of studies down to the molecular level that suggests that diabetes or the inability of type 2 diabetes, yung inability of our cells to absorb the blood sugar is actually caused by a high animal fat diet. Um, I could send you studies on that high animal fat floating around our bloodstream causes our muscle cells or cells not to stop absorbing blood sugar, and it leads to diabetes. So, but no doctor, or not a lot of doctor would say that avoid a lot of animal dishes to improve your diabetes. And another, just another, I did this nutrition kasi, so I have a lot of this. A plant-based diet cannot does not only prevent or does not only prevent or treat diseases, so like the cardiovascular diseases or cancer, but it can also reverse. It can also reverse these diseases. So parang before it's too late, you can reverse these lifestyle diseases by shifting to a more plant-based diet. So those are my facts.
I love it. Like you put it out there and like, hey, I have a lot of myth, busting things to put it out on the platform because I think it's about right. Like, madami tayong mga beliefs, maybe just passed through generations that we want to like, is it really true? Or like we just live it out just because, our moms or grandparents taught us about it. So like we settle for that. But it's about time like, hey, Google is there, Alexa is and it's about time to debunk this. Gab, do you have anything in your pocket?
Only have random trivia that I teach my students before. So I think let me share one. That peanut is not a nut, it's a legume. That's one. um what else? Strawberry is uh it's not a fruit. The fruit there are the small black things there. I forgot what they're called. But those are the fruits there. That's a big receptacle. And then 99% of farms worldwide of 99% of our food are supplied by small farms, not by large farms. So let's get away with corporate farming. Let's support more smallhold farmers. I guess those are the facts that I would have to share because I don't have much in my wallet right now.
I love it. Yung mga basic things, right? Like, parang, ano ba? Plant or vegetable? Sandy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything, but I will just continue what Kevin or Kev has started. So I would say coconut is not a nut. It's a drupe, just like your mango. And then, yeah, but I would say that if we say hormone free meat, it's not really hormone free. It has hormones in it, but on a certain level that did not pass the standards of whatever certification body is setting it. The same with antibiotic free stuff. It has antibiotics, but on the lower scale side of things, not not more than the set standard by whoever set those standards to be safe for humans. And yeah, and avoid tuna, especially big fish, because they are basically the the bucket of mercury pollution in the ocean. Yeah, I mean, and also not all the time GMOs are bad. It depends on how do you use the technology. GMO is just a technology. It depends on how people use it, either for good or for bad, and what are their intentions, I would say.
Oh my, I love this this part. It takes it takes experts to like say it out loud and like, okay, I really believe you. Then like scrolling through Google and busting, is this a fake website or not? But okay, thank you so much for providing this information, guys. I really had so much fun. I live for myth or fact things. Gab?
Yes. So, well, same with you, Yan. I really love their myth busting. I love the unassuming approach, no, na parang I don't really have something to share, but then they're like giving us a lot of ideas right off the bat. So kudos to everybody. Just to wrap things off, everyone, what's your parting message to our audiences, to all our younger audiences and entrepreneurs and people who are looking up to you guys, especially on the topic of sustainability and restoration and your projects? Any final message maybe you'd want to share about your projects, your current endeavors, and things like that? Let's start with Stephen.
Huh. Well, in terms of career, if younger people are listening to this, go ahead and explore. It's a very good time to be entrepreneurs. Actually, for some reason, there's a lot of investments flowing into um, this high growth areas of entrepreneurship. So even in food innovation and in sustainability, everyone is talking about it. So there's a lot of investments coming in for this. Even governments are talking about this. Southeast Asia is actually starting. So with the likes of Kev in NEDA, of course, all of this sustainability discussions are ongoing. So that's for career and in terms of entrepreneurship. In terms of lifestyle, yes, try to explore a more plant-based lifestyle for restoration, for sustainability. It does, I admit, it does take a little bit of research to make sure that you still have a balanced diet. But again, I'm not asking you to fully eliminate animal meat from your diet, but reduce it and explore and go back to our roots. As before we really went into industrial animal farming. We had root crops, we had kamote, we had and these did wonderful stuff to our personal health. So I would encourage you to look back again in the new year for a healthier diet for our planet, for our farmers, and of course for our health. So that's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. That was so inspiring, and I'm pretty sure that there's a lot to look forward to with the WTH Foods endeavor in the future. Let's now go with Kevin. Kev, go ahead.
Yeah, from me, if you can't be a doctor or a lawyer, become an agriculturist because that's me. Follow my footsteps. No kidding. Just I think um go into agriculture or go into biology or food technology, those fields that are very important in our world. You don't have to become a doctor, you don't have to become a lawyer. That's too basic. We have a role to fill. Those professions are not popular, but they are very important in our world. And this is a call to action for those who are following me on TikTok. If you are here, go pick agriculture. And if you're not yet following me on TikTok, follow me at Kev Cuevas, and you'll get to learn about agriculture every day. And we'll go myth or bust some facts or myths about agriculture there. So follow me there.
Yes, Kevin has a lot to share, to be honest, with TikTok. If you want to be a TikTok influencer, Kev could also give you guys a lot of pieces of advice. Last but not the least, we have Sandy.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. Yeah, I agree with Kevin. I'm also an agriculturist, but I haven't renewed my license for years now. But yeah, I would say young people should go to agriculture because we're running out of professional farmers in the Philippines, and that's what our country really need, farmers. And we need also people from science. And I also appreciate what Stephen just talked about, that it's really true that science people are mostly not connected with the social side of things. We need scientists that have also passion to go to the field and really listen to the people, what they need, and base your research on those conversation with people. That's why I kind of like went off of research and went to community development, so I can also understand the local people and also communicate my research in a way that the public can understand. That's my ultimate goal actually for studying here in this program. And yeah, and in terms of sustainable living, just do whatever you can do for the moment based on the conversation we had today. Every small steps is already a big step towards sustainability. That's it.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks to, again, Stephen, Kev, and Sandy for their inspiring messages and sharing about their advocacies, their lifestyle, and obviously their expertise in their own field. We hope we have inspired you through the works of these talented people. As always, thanks for listening again to the GNA podcast.
If you enjoy our show, please subscribe to Spotify and Apple Music and be sure to come back next week for a discussion on Theory U, grounding, and meditation. Until then, this is Gab and Ayana.
Don't forget, it's the G&A Podcast bringing you inspiring life stories of the youth today. Bye!
Welcome again to another webinar this Saturday. Thank you for spending your time again with us.
I have a new friend, and at first they were very serious people.
Magandang araw and mabuhay! Chairwoman Ayana.